Hello there, and welcome to another journey into the wonderful world of self sufficiency, where big dreams meet small spaces and every square foot holds incredible potential. Today, we're diving deep into the art of backyard homesteading, and I want to know right from the start, where are you watching from, and just how much outdoor space do you have to work with? Whether you're blessed with a sprawling acre or making magic happen on a tiny balcony, this exploration is for you. If you find this voyage into small space homesteading helpful, inspiring, or just a nice way to dream about your future garden while sipping your morning coffee, I'd be ever so grateful if you gave the video a like and perhaps subscribed. It helps this little corner of practical wisdom reach others who might be yearning to grow their own food and live more sustainably. Now let's settle in and begin this gentle exploration of what's truly possible in the spaces we call home. Because somewhere between seed packets and harvest baskets, between windowsill herbs and backyard chickens, lies the beautiful story of small space homesteading. You know, there's something deeply satisfying about the idea of living off your own land, isn't there? The romantic notion of stepping out your back door to gather fresh eggs, pluck ripe tomatoes, and snip fragrant herbs for dinner. But here's the thing that trips up most aspiring homesteaders. They think they need vast acres of rolling countryside to make it happen. They imagine themselves needing a red barn, split rail fences, and enough land to get genuinely lost on their own property. The truth is far more encouraging and accessible than that. Some of the most productive and innovative homesteads I've encountered exist in spaces smaller than most people's living rooms. I've seen balconies that produce enough salad greens to feed a family of four, backyards the size of a parking space that yield hundreds of pounds of vegetables annually, and tiny urban lots that house chickens, rabbits, and enough preserved food to last through winter. What we're really talking about here is a shift in thinking, a move away from the industrial agriculture mindset that bigger automatically means better. Small space homesteading is about working smarter, not necessarily harder. It's about understanding that intensity can trump acreage, that vertical growing can multiply your harvest, and that every container, every sunny spot, every underutilized corner holds potential for food production. The beauty of starting small is that it allows you to learn without overwhelming yourself. You can master the basics of soil health, plant care, and seasonal planning on a manageable scale. You can experiment with different techniques, make mistakes without devastating consequences, and gradually build both your skills and your confidence. Each success becomes a stepping stone to the next level of your homesteading journey. But let's be honest about something else. Small space homesteading isn't just about the romance of self sufficiency, it's about practical benefits that touch every aspect of your life. There's the obvious advantage of reducing your grocery bills, sometimes dramatically so. I know families who've cut their produce costs by 70% simply by growing their own vegetables in raised beds that take up less space than a small car. Then there's the unmatched quality of homegrown food. When you control every aspect of your growing process from seed selection to harvest timing, you're guaranteed produce that's fresher, more nutritious, and more flavorful than anything you'll find in a store. That tomato you pick at peak ripeness and eat within minutes bears little resemblance to its grocery store counterpart that was picked green and shipped across the country. The health benefits extend beyond just nutrition. There's something profoundly therapeutic about working with soil, tending plants, and connecting with the natural cycles of growth and harvest. Many people find that their small homesteading activities become a form of meditation, a way to decompress from the stresses of modern life while accomplishing something tangible and meaningful. Food security is another compelling reason to embrace small space homesteading. Recent years have shown us how fragile our food supply chains can be. Having even a modest ability to produce your own food provides both practical security and peace of mind. You're not dependent solely on grocery stores, shipping networks, or the stability of industrial agriculture. There's also the environmental impact to consider. When you grow your own food, you eliminate the carbon footprint associated with transportation, reduce packaging waste, and have complete control over what chemicals, if any, touch your food. You can garden organically, build soil health, and even contribute to local biodiversity by choosing heirloom varieties and creating habitat for beneficial insects. The skills you develop through small space homesteading have value that extends far beyond food production. You learn resource management, problem solving, planning, and patience. You develop a deeper understanding of natural systems and seasonal rhythms. These skills and insights enrich your life in ways that go far beyond the practical benefits of homegrown food. But perhaps most importantly, small space homesteading connects you to something fundamental about human nature. For thousands of years, people have grown their own food, preserved their harvests, and lived in harmony with the natural world. There's something deeply satisfying about reclaiming these skills, about knowing that you can provide for yourself and your family regardless of what's happening in the broader world. Now, I want to address something that might be running through your mind right now. You might be thinking that your space is too small, too urban, too shaded, or too something to make homesteading work. You might be convinced that your brown thumb, your busy schedule, or your lack of experience makes this impossible. Let me gently challenge those assumptions. I've seen remarkable homesteads flourish in the most unlikely places. Apartment balconies that produce enough herbs and vegetables to supply a small restaurant, shaded yards that grow an abundance of leafy greens and mushrooms, urban lots wedged between busy streets that house chickens, rabbits, and thriving gardens. The key isn't having perfect conditions, it's working creatively with the conditions you have. Every space has potential, and every limitation can become an opportunity for innovation. Limited sunlight, perfect for growing shade-tolerant greens and herbs. Small area, ideal for intensive growing methods and vertical gardening. Poor soil, an excellent reason to explore container gardening and raised beds. Busy schedule, a chance to focus on low-maintenance, high-yield crops. The truth is that small space homesteading is often more manageable and more productive per square foot than traditional large-scale farming. When you're working with a smaller area, you can give each plant more attention, optimize every square inch, and respond quickly to problems before they become major issues. Consider the concept of market gardening, where professional growers produce substantial incomes from plots as small as a quarter acre. They achieve this through intensive planting, succession growing, and careful space management. You can apply these same principles to your backyard homestead, whether your goal is feeding your family or simply enjoying the freshest possible food. The techniques and strategies we'll explore throughout this series are scalable and adaptable. Whether you're working with a sprawling suburban yard or a collection of containers on a fire escape, the principles remain the same. It's about maximizing productivity, optimizing space, and creating systems that work with your lifestyle and circumstances. Small space homesteading is also remarkably forgiving. Unlike large-scale farming, where mistakes can be costly and devastating, small-scale growing allows for experimentation and learning. If one bed doesn't produce as expected, you still have others. If a particular variety doesn't thrive in your conditions, you can try something different next season without major consequences. The community aspect of small space homesteading is something that often surprises people. When you start growing your own food, you naturally connect with others who share this interest. You'll find yourself trading seeds, sharing harvests, and learning from neighbors who have different experiences and expertise. This sense of community and shared knowledge is one of the most rewarding aspects of the homesteading journey. There's also something to be said for the example you set when you embrace small space homesteading. Your neighbors, friends, and family members see what's possible. They witness the abundance that can come from a small garden, the satisfaction of homegrown food, and the peace that comes from self-sufficiency. Many find themselves inspired to start their own homesteading journey, creating a ripple effect of positive change in their communities. The timing for exploring small space homesteading couldn't be better. We're living in an era of unprecedented access to information, tools, and resources. Online communities share knowledge freely, seed companies offer varieties specifically bred for small spaces, and innovative products make intensive growing easier than ever before. What once required years of trial and error can now be learned through careful research and the wisdom of experienced growers who share their knowledge generously. Technology has also made small space homesteading more accessible and efficient. Simple tools like soil thermometers, moisture meters, and grow lights can dramatically improve your success rate. Apps can help you plan your garden, track your harvests, and time your plantings for maximum productivity. These tools aren't necessary for successful homesteading, but they can certainly make the journey easier and more enjoyable. The economic benefits of small space homesteading become more compelling every year as food costs continue to rise. A packet of seeds that costs a few dollars can produce vegetables worth $50 or more. A small investment in quality soil and containers can pay for itself in a single growing season. And unlike many investments, the returns from homesteading are immediate, tangible, and delicious. But the true value of small space homesteading goes beyond economics. It's about reclaiming a sense of agency and self-reliance in an increasingly complex world. It's about knowing that you have the skills and knowledge to provide for yourself and your family. It's about the deep satisfaction that comes from eating food you've grown with your own hands. The journey of small space homesteading is deeply personal and endlessly rewarding. Every gardener develops their own style, their own favorite crops, and their own innovative solutions to space and time constraints. What works perfectly for one person might not suit another, and that's part of the beauty of this practice. There's no single right way to homestead in small spaces, only the way that works best for you and your unique circumstances. As we embark on this exploration together, I want you to think about your own space, your own goals, and your own dreams for what small space homesteading might bring to your life. Whether you're dreaming of fresh tomatoes in January, homegrown eggs for breakfast, or simply the satisfaction of knowing you can provide for yourself, the possibilities are far greater than you might imagine. The techniques we'll explore, the strategies we'll discuss, and the innovations we'll discover are all proven methods that real people use in real spaces to grow real food. This isn't theoretical knowledge or wishful thinking, it's practical wisdom that you can apply immediately to start your own homesteading journey, regardless of how much space you have to work with. So let's begin this gentle exploration of what's possible when you combine creativity, knowledge, and determination with whatever space you have available. Because the truth is, the size of your space matters far less than the size of your dreams and your willingness to start where you are with what you have. Now let's dive into the practical magic of small space homesteading. Because here's the thing, when you're working with limited square footage, every inch becomes precious real estate. You can't afford to waste space on inefficient layouts or poorly chosen plants. Instead, you need to think like a master architect, designing systems that work together in harmony, each element serving multiple purposes while maximizing your yield. The foundation of successful small space homesteading lies in understanding your environment completely. Before you plant a single seed or install your first raised bed, you need to become intimately familiar with your space. Walk through it at different times of day, noting where the sun hits and for how long. Which corners stay shaded? Where does water naturally collect after rain? How does wind move through the area? These observations aren't just helpful, they're absolutely critical because in small spaces, you can't afford to make mistakes that larger homesteads might easily recover from. Light is your most valuable resource, and understanding your light patterns will determine everything else. Most vegetables need at least 6 hours of direct sunlight daily, but in small spaces, you might need to get creative. South-facing walls become prime real estate for vertical growing systems. Even a north-facing balcony can be productive if you choose the right crops. Shade-tolerant greens like lettuce, spinach, and herbs can thrive with just 4 hours of direct sun. Water management in small spaces requires a completely different approach than traditional gardening. You can't rely on natural rainfall patterns or large-scale irrigation systems. Instead, you need to think about water as a precious resource that needs to be captured, stored, and distributed efficiently. Rain barrels become essential, even if you only have a small balcony with a roof overhang. Drip irrigation systems, which might seem like overkill for a large garden, become absolutely essential in container gardening where plants can dry out quickly. Soil quality takes on new meaning when you're working with containers and raised beds. You're not improving existing soil, you're creating an entire growing medium from scratch. This is actually an advantage because you can create the perfect soil blend for your specific crops. But it also means you need to understand soil composition, drainage, and nutrition in ways that traditional gardeners might take for granted. The beauty of small space homesteading is that you can control every variable. Your soil mix can be precisely calibrated for the plants you want to grow. Your watering schedule can be adjusted based on exact container sizes and plant needs. Your pest management can be incredibly targeted because you can inspect every plant regularly. Container selection becomes an art form in small space homesteading. You'll quickly learn that not all containers are created equal, and size matters more than you might think. Those adorable small pots you see at garden centers, they're mostly decorative. For serious food production, you need containers that give roots room to spread. Tomatoes need at least 5-gallon containers, but they'll perform much better in 10 or 15-gallon containers. Herbs can thrive in smaller spaces, but even they benefit from containers that are deeper than they are wide. The material of your containers affects everything from water retention to root temperature. Plastic containers are lightweight and retain moisture well, but they can get too hot in direct sun. Ceramic pots look beautiful but are heavy and can crack in freeze-thaw cycles. Fabric grow bags have become incredibly popular because they're lightweight, allow air pruning of roots, and can be folded up when not in use. Vertical growing transforms small spaces into productive powerhouses. When you can't spread out, you grow up. Trellises, towers, and hanging systems multiply your growing area exponentially. A simple tomato cage can support not just tomatoes, but also beans that climb up through the structure. Hanging baskets aren't just for flowers, they're perfect for cherry tomatoes, strawberries, and trailing herbs. Wall-mounted systems turn vertical surfaces into growing space. Pocket planters, mounted containers, and living walls can transform a bare fence or wall into a productive garden. Even apartment dwellers can use tension poles and hanging systems to create vertical growing space that doesn't require permanent installation. Succession planting becomes absolutely essential in small spaces because you need to maximize production from every container. Instead of planting all your lettuce at once, you plant a new row every 2 weeks. This ensures a continuous harvest rather than a single large harvest that might overwhelm your household's ability to consume it. Companion planting takes on new significance when space is limited. You're not just planting compatible plants together, you're creating mini ecosystems in individual containers. Tomatoes, basil, and marigolds in the same large container create a natural pest deterrent system while maximizing production. Lettuce planted around the base of taller plants like peppers or eggplants makes use of space that would otherwise be wasted. Timing becomes crucial because you can't afford to have empty containers sitting idle. You need to plan your planting so that as one crop finishes, the next is ready to take its place. This requires thinking several months ahead and understanding the growing cycles of different plants. Intensive planting methods like square foot gardening become incredibly relevant in small spaces. Instead of traditional row planting, you divide your growing area into square foot sections and plant each section with the appropriate number of plants for that crop. 1 square foot might hold 16 carrots, 4 lettuce plants, or 1 tomato plant. Microgreens and sprouts deserve special mention because they're perfect for small space homesteading. They can be grown indoors year-round, require minimal space, and are ready to harvest in just days or weeks. A single shelf can produce enough microgreens to significantly supplement your diet with fresh, nutritious greens. The key to successful small space homesteading is understanding that limitations breed creativity. When you can't do things the traditional way, you're forced to innovate. You discover that lettuce grows beautifully in gutters mounted on walls. You learn that strawberries thrive in hanging baskets. You find that herbs planted in vertical towers produce more than the same plants spread across a traditional garden bed. This constraint-driven innovation is what makes small space homesteading so exciting. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to find a better solution. Every limitation pushes you to think more creatively about how to maximize your space and resources. The beauty of starting small is that you can experiment without major consequences. If a particular container arrangement doesn't work, you can easily rearrange it. If a plant variety doesn't perform well in your specific conditions, you can try a different variety next season. This iterative approach allows you to continuously improve your system. Success in small space homesteading comes from understanding that every element needs to work harder. Your containers need to be the right size for your plants. Your soil needs to be perfectly balanced. Your watering system needs to be efficient and reliable. Your plant selection needs to be based on productivity and suitability for your specific conditions. But here's what's truly remarkable about small space homesteading. The attention to detail and intensive management that small spaces require often results in higher yields per square foot than traditional gardening methods. When you're managing every variable carefully, when you're providing optimal conditions for each plant, when you're timing everything perfectly, you can achieve incredible productivity from surprisingly small spaces. The journey of small space homesteading is one of continuous learning and optimization. Each season teaches you something new about your space, your plants, and your own capabilities. What starts as a few containers on a balcony can evolve into a sophisticated system that provides a significant portion of your household's fresh produce needs. Now let's dive into the heart of small space homesteading, food production. This is where the magic truly happens, where you transform every available inch into productive growing space that feeds your family and nourishes your soul. The beauty of small space food production lies not in its limitations, but in its incredible efficiency and the intimate connection you develop with every plant you grow. When you're working with limited space, every square foot becomes precious real estate. But here's what most people don't realize. Small space gardens can actually produce more food per square foot than traditional large-scale operations. How? Through intensive growing methods, careful planning, and the kind of attention to detail that only comes when you're personally invested in every plant. Let's start with the foundation of any productive small space garden. Understanding your growing zones. Whether you're on a balcony, in a tiny backyard, or working with just a few containers, you need to map out your microclimates. That sunny corner by the south-facing wall, that's your heat-loving tomato and pepper zone. The partially shaded area under the eaves, perfect for leafy greens and herbs. The spot that gets morning sun but afternoon shade, ideal for crops that appreciate cooler conditions. Container gardening becomes your best friend in small spaces, but we're not talking about those tiny decorative pots you see at garden centers. We're talking about serious food production containers, 5-gallon buckets, large storage totes, even old laundry baskets lined with landscape fabric can become productive growing vessels. The key is matching container size to plant needs. Lettuce and herbs can thrive in shallow containers, while tomatoes and peppers need deeper root space. Here's where it gets exciting: succession planting. This technique allows you to harvest continuously throughout the growing season instead of getting overwhelmed with a single massive harvest. Plant lettuce every 2 weeks and you'll have fresh salad greens constantly. Sow radishes every 10 days and you'll never be without these quick growing roots. It's like having a conveyor belt of fresh food coming from your small space. Vertical growing opens up an entirely new dimension of possibility. Trellises, towers, and wall-mounted systems can triple or quadruple your growing space. Pole beans climb upward instead of sprawling outward. Cucumbers and squash can be trained up sturdy supports. Even strawberries can cascade from vertical towers, creating living walls of food. The square foot gardening method revolutionizes how you think about space. Instead of traditional rows with wasted walking space, you create intensive growing grids. Each square foot is planted with the appropriate number of plants for that crop. 16 radishes in one square, 1 tomato plant in another, 4 lettuce plants in a third. It's organized, efficient, and incredibly productive. Companion planting becomes both an art and a science in small spaces. Basil planted near tomatoes doesn't just save space, it actually improves the tomato's flavor and helps repel pests. Marigolds scattered throughout your containers provide natural pest control while adding beauty. Lettuce can grow in the shade of taller plants, maximizing every inch of growing space. Fast-growing crops become your secret weapon for continuous harvests. Radishes mature in just 30 days. Lettuce can be harvested in 45 days. Spinach provides multiple harvests from the same plant. These quick turnaround crops allow you to maximize production in minimal space and time. But let's talk about the crops that truly shine in small spaces. Cherry tomatoes often outproduce their full-size cousins and are perfect for containers. They're also incredibly rewarding to grow, providing sweet, fresh fruit throughout the season. Herbs are absolute champions in small space production. A single basil plant can provide fresh herbs for months, and the difference between store-bought and homegrown herbs is remarkable. Leafy greens are perhaps the most practical choice for small space food production. They grow quickly, don't require deep root systems, and provide incredible nutrition. A container of mixed lettuce can supply fresh salads for weeks. Spinach, kale, and chard are nutritional powerhouses that thrive in compact spaces. Don't overlook root vegetables. Carrots, radishes, and beets can be grown in containers and provide satisfying harvests. Even potatoes can be grown in containers, with some creative techniques allowing you to harvest 10–15 pounds of potatoes from a single large container. The beauty of small space food production lies in its manageability. You can tend to every plant individually, notice pest problems early, and harvest at peak ripeness. There's no waste, no overwhelming abundance that goes bad before you can use it. Every tomato, every leaf of lettuce, every herb sprig is precious and utilized. Seed starting becomes a crucial skill for small space gardeners. Starting your own seeds allows you to grow exactly the varieties you want, when you want them. A simple seed starting setup on a windowsill or undergrow lights can provide all the transplants you need for continuous production. The economic benefits of small space food production are substantial. A single packet of lettuce seeds costing $2 can produce hundreds of dollars worth of fresh salad greens. Herbs that cost several dollars per package at the store can be grown for pennies. The return on investment is remarkable, especially when you consider the superior quality and freshness of homegrown produce. Food preservation becomes important even in small space production. Learning to dry herbs, freeze excess harvests, and preserve peak season abundance ensures you benefit from your gardening efforts year-round. A dehydrator can preserve herbs that would otherwise go to waste, and freezing techniques can capture the peak flavors of summer for winter enjoyment. The seasonal rhythm of small space food production connects you to natural cycles in a way that grocery store shopping never can. You learn to anticipate the first spring greens, savor the abundance of summer, and appreciate the hardy crops of fall. This connection to seasons and cycles is deeply satisfying and grounding. Planning becomes crucial for maximizing small space production. Keeping records of what you plant, when you plant it, and how it performs helps you optimize your space and timing. A simple garden journal becomes an invaluable tool for improving your results year after year. The satisfaction of preparing a meal with ingredients you've grown yourself is indescribable. That first salad made entirely from your container garden, that pasta sauce featuring your homegrown tomatoes and basil, that stir fry with your own fresh vegetables, these experiences connect you to your food in a profound way. Small space food production also offers incredible flexibility. If something isn't working, you can change it quickly. Containers can be moved to better locations, crops can be switched out seasonally, and techniques can be adapted based on what you learn. The health benefits extend beyond just the nutritional value of fresh produce. The physical activity of gardening, the stress relief of working with plants, and the mental satisfaction of growing your own food contribute to overall well-being. There's something deeply therapeutic about nurturing plants and watching them grow. Quality control becomes automatic when you're growing your own food. You know exactly what inputs were used, when the harvest occurred, and how fresh everything is. There are no questions about pesticide use, no concerns about how long produce has been sitting in storage or transport. The learning curve is gentle but continuous. Each season brings new challenges and discoveries. You develop an intuitive understanding of plant needs, soil conditions, and optimal growing techniques. This knowledge compounds over time, making you increasingly successful and confident. Small space food production proves that homesteading isn't about the size of your land, it's about the creativity, dedication, and care you bring to growing your own food. Every container garden, every vertical growing system, every succession planting is a step toward greater self sufficiency and connection to the land, even in the smallest spaces. Now let's dive into the heart of maximizing your small space potential through creative resource management and innovative growing techniques. You've established the foundation of your backyard homestead by understanding your environment and setting up your basic systems. The real magic happens when you begin to think like a resourceful homesteader, someone who sees opportunity in every square foot and possibility in every challenge. Water management in small spaces requires a completely different mindset from traditional gardening. You're not just watering plants, you're orchestrating a symphony of hydration that captures, stores, and recycles every precious drop. Rain barrels become your first line of defense against drought and high water bills. Position them strategically under downspouts, but don't stop there. Consider connecting multiple barrels in series, creating a cascading system that maximizes collection during heavy rains while providing steady supply during dry spells. The beauty of small space homesteading lies in the intimate relationship you develop with your water systems. You'll notice how different plants respond to varying moisture levels, how soil composition affects drainage, and how timing your watering can dramatically impact plant health. Drip irrigation isn't just efficient, it's transformative. A simple system of soaker hoses or drip emitters can reduce water usage by up to 60%, while delivering moisture directly to root zones where it's needed most. But water management goes beyond just delivery. Think about water cycling through your entire system. Gray water from your kitchen sink, filtered through a simple sand and gravel system, can irrigate non-edible plants. Rainwater collected from your roof can be filtered and stored for drinking water backup. Even the humidity from your breath and cooking can be captured and redirected to thirsty plants in enclosed growing areas. Soil creation becomes an art form when you're working with limited space. Traditional composting might seem impossible in a small backyard, but innovative techniques open up remarkable possibilities. Tumbling composters work faster than static piles and take up minimal floor space. Worm composting can happen indoors year-round, turning kitchen scraps into black gold while producing liquid fertilizer that's like rocket fuel for plants. The key insight that transforms small space gardeners into productive homesteaders is understanding that soil isn't just dirt, it's a living ecosystem. Every handful contains billions of microorganisms working together to break down organic matter, cycle nutrients, and support plant health. Your job isn't to control this ecosystem, but to nurture it, feeding it with diverse organic materials and protecting it from chemicals that disrupt its natural balance. Bokashi composting represents a revolutionary approach perfectly suited to small spaces. This Japanese fermentation technique uses beneficial microorganisms to break down organic matter, including meat and dairy that traditional composting can't handle. The process happens in sealed containers, eliminating odors and pest problems while creating nutrient-rich compost in weeks rather than months. Your soil building strategy should focus on creating layers of fertility. Start with a base of quality potting mix, then add compost, aged manure, and organic amendments specific to your crop's needs. But here's where small space homesteading gets exciting. You can customize soil blends for different plants in different containers. Your tomatoes get calcium-rich soil, your blueberries get acidic amendments, and your herbs get well-draining sandy mixtures. Succession planting transforms your small space from a garden into a food production system. Instead of planting all your lettuce at once and harvesting it all at the same time, you plant small amounts every 2 weeks, creating a continuous harvest that extends throughout the growing season. This technique works brilliantly with quick-growing crops like radishes, spinach, lettuce, and herbs. The mathematics of succession planting are beautiful in their simplicity. A 4-foot square bed can produce lettuce for 6 months if you replant every 2 weeks, compared to 2 large harvests with traditional planting. You're not just growing more food, you're growing it more efficiently, reducing waste, and ensuring fresh produce is always available. But succession planting requires planning and organization. You need to track planting dates, harvest windows, and replanting schedules. Many successful small space homesteaders use simple calendar systems or smartphone apps to manage their planting rotations. The key is starting small and building complexity as you gain experience and confidence. Companion planting elevates your small space from efficient to extraordinary. This ancient practice pairs plants that benefit each other, creating synergistic relationships that improve growth, reduce pests, and maximize space utilization. The classic Native American Three Sisters combination of corn, beans, and squash demonstrates how different plants can support each other physically and nutritionally. In small spaces, companion planting becomes even more crucial because you're intensifying plant density. Basil planted near tomatoes doesn't just save space, it improves tomato flavor and repels harmful insects. Marigolds scattered throughout your garden create natural pest control while adding beauty and attracting beneficial insects. Nasturtiums serve as trap crops, luring aphids away from your vegetables while providing edible flowers for salads. The science behind companion planting reveals fascinating plant interactions. Some plants release chemicals through their roots that benefit neighboring plants, while others attract beneficial insects or repel harmful ones. Understanding these relationships allows you to create plant communities that thrive together, reducing the need for external inputs while increasing overall productivity. Vertical growing techniques multiply your growing space exponentially. Trellises, cages, and towers allow vining plants to grow upward instead of outward, transforming a two-dimensional garden into a three-dimensional food forest. But vertical growing requires understanding how different plants respond to vertical environments and how to support their growth as they climb. The engineering aspects of vertical growing become critical in small spaces. Your support structures must be strong enough to hold fully loaded plants while being stable enough to withstand wind and weather. A tomato plant can weigh 30 pounds when fully loaded with fruit, and a cucumber vine can produce dozens of fruits throughout the season. Your trellises and supports become infrastructure investments that pay dividends for years. Hydroponic systems represent the ultimate expression of small space efficiency. These soilless growing systems can produce 2 to 3 times more food per square foot than traditional soil gardens while using less water and eliminating soil-borne diseases. Deep water culture, nutrient film technique, and ebb and flow systems each offer different advantages for different crops and space constraints. The beauty of hydroponics lies in its precision and control. You're not guessing about nutrient levels or pH, you're monitoring and adjusting them for optimal plant growth. This level of control allows you to grow crops that might struggle in your local soil conditions while extending growing seasons and maximizing harvests. But hydroponic systems require understanding and maintenance. You need to monitor pH levels, nutrient concentrations, and water quality. The initial setup costs can be significant, but the long-term benefits of increased production, reduced water usage, and year-round growing capability often justify the investment. Your small space homestead becomes a testing ground for innovation and creativity. Every challenge presents an opportunity to develop new solutions, try different approaches, and refine your techniques. The constraints of limited space force you to think more carefully about every decision, leading to more efficient and productive systems than you might achieve with unlimited space. The mental shift from consumer to producer happens gradually but powerfully. You begin to see your small space not as a limitation but as a concentrated opportunity for abundance. Every square foot becomes precious real estate to be optimized. Every plant becomes part of a larger system working toward food security and self-reliance. This transformation extends beyond just growing food. You develop skills in observation, problem solving, and resource management that apply to every aspect of life. You learn to see patterns, anticipate problems, and create solutions using available resources. These skills become invaluable in an uncertain world where adaptability and resourcefulness are increasingly important. The community aspect of small space homesteading creates connections and relationships that enrich your life beyond the food you grow. Sharing surplus produce, trading seeds, and exchanging knowledge with neighbors builds social networks that strengthen communities. Your small space becomes a catalyst for broader conversations about sustainability, food security, and environmental stewardship. As you develop expertise in maximizing your small space, you become a resource for others facing similar challenges. Your experience troubleshooting problems, optimizing systems, and achieving abundant harvests becomes valuable knowledge that can inspire and guide others on their homesteading journeys. The ripple effects of your small space homestead extend far beyond your property lines. You're demonstrating that food production is possible anywhere, that individuals can take control of their food security, and that small actions can create meaningful change. Your example encourages others to start their own food production efforts, multiplying the impact of your initial investment in time and resources. This systematic approach to small space homesteading creates a foundation for expansion and continuous improvement. As you master basic techniques and systems, you can add complexity, try new crops, and experiment with advanced methods. Your small space becomes a laboratory for sustainable living, a place where you can test ideas and refine approaches before potentially scaling them up. The journey from small space gardener to productive homesteader requires patience, persistence, and a willingness to learn from both successes and failures. Every season brings new challenges and opportunities to improve your systems, refine your techniques, and increase your harvests. The key is maintaining a mindset of continuous learning and adaptation, always looking for ways to do more with less while building resilience and self-sufficiency. Your small space homestead becomes a testament to human ingenuity and the power of working with natural systems rather than against them. It demonstrates that abundance is possible even in the smallest spaces when you combine knowledge, creativity, and dedication with respect for the natural processes that sustain all life. Now we come to the most transformative aspect of small space homesteading. And if you've been following along, you know we've covered the fundamentals of maximizing your growing space, understanding your environment, and implementing efficient systems. But there's something deeper happening here, something that goes beyond just growing vegetables in containers or training plants up trellises. This is where small space homesteading reveals its true power, and frankly, it's the part that most people completely miss. When you're working within constraints, when every square inch matters, when you can't just expand outward whenever you want more growing space, something remarkable happens. You start thinking differently. You start seeing possibilities where others see limitations. You develop what I call the small space mindset. And this mindset doesn't just apply to gardening. It transforms how you approach problems, how you view resources, and how you understand what's truly possible. Let me share something with you. Last spring, I was visiting a friend who had just moved into a tiny apartment with nothing but a north-facing balcony. She was convinced she couldn't grow anything because she'd always been told you need full sun and lots of space. But here's what we discovered together. That north-facing balcony, while it didn't get direct sunlight, was actually perfect for leafy greens. The consistent, gentle light was ideal for lettuce, spinach, and herbs. Within 2 months, she was harvesting fresh salad greens daily from just 3 square feet of space. But the real transformation wasn't in her salad bowl, it was in her confidence. She started looking at other challenges in her life through this same lens. If she could grow food in what seemed like impossible conditions, what else was possible? This is the hidden gift of small space homesteading. It rewires your brain to see abundance where others see scarcity. Now let's talk about what happens when you embrace this mindset fully. First, you develop what I call resource consciousness. This isn't about being cheap or stingy. It's about understanding the true value of everything around you. That coffee ground from your morning brew isn't waste, it's nitrogen-rich compost material. That rainwater running off your roof isn't just water, it's a free irrigation system waiting to be captured. That sunny spot by your kitchen window isn't just a place to put a plant, it's prime real estate for growing fresh herbs. This consciousness extends far beyond gardening. You start seeing opportunities everywhere. You notice when your neighbor is throwing away perfectly good wooden pallets that could become raised beds. You realize that the local coffee shop would probably love to give you their used grounds instead of throwing them away. You understand that the timing of your grocery shopping can yield significantly better prices on organic produce that you can use for seed saving. But here's where it gets really interesting. Small space homesteading forces you to think in systems rather than individual components. When you only have a small balcony or a tiny backyard, you can't afford to have anything that isn't pulling its weight. Every plant, every container, every inch of space needs to be optimized. This systems thinking is incredibly valuable. For instance, you might start with a simple container garden, but then you realize that the water draining from your upper containers can feed the plants below. So you arrange them in tiers. Then you notice that the tall plants can provide shade for the heat sensitive crops below. Before you know it, you've created an integrated ecosystem where every element supports the others. This same systems thinking applies to your household economy. You start seeing connections between different aspects of your life. Growing your own herbs reduces your grocery bill, but it also means you're more likely to cook at home, which saves even more money and improves your health. Composting your kitchen scraps reduces your waste disposal costs while creating fertilizer for your plants. These connections compound over time. The creativity that emerges from constraint is absolutely fascinating. When you can't just buy more space or more expensive equipment, you have to innovate. You start seeing everyday objects as potential growing containers. That old colander becomes a perfect planter for strawberries. Those worn out rain boots become charming herb containers. That unused bookshelf transforms into a vertical growing system. This creative problem solving becomes a way of life. You approach challenges with curiosity rather than frustration. Instead of thinking, I can't do this because I don't have enough space, you start thinking, how can I make this work with what I have? This shift in thinking is profound and it touches every area of your life. Let me tell you about the community aspect because this is where small space homesteading really shines. When you're working within constraints, you naturally become more connected to your neighbors and local community. You might not have space for a large compost pile, but your neighbor might be happy to share theirs in exchange for some of your harvest. You might not have room for a full tool shed, but a tool sharing arrangement with nearby gardeners benefits everyone. These connections create resilience. When you know your neighbors, when you're part of a community of people who are all working toward greater self-sufficiency, you're not just more prepared for emergencies, you're part of a network that makes daily life richer and more meaningful. There's also something deeply satisfying about the intensity of small space production. When you're maximizing every square inch, when you're getting multiple harvests from the same space throughout the season, when you're producing an abundance of food from what others might consider inadequate space, there's a profound sense of accomplishment. You're not just growing food, you're proving that the conventional wisdom about what's possible is often wrong. This intensity also creates a deeper connection to your food and to the growing process. When you only have a few plants, you get to know each one individually. You notice subtle changes in leaf color that might indicate nutrient deficiencies. You observe how different plants respond to varying amounts of water. You become attuned to the rhythms of growth and harvest in a way that's much more difficult when you're managing a large garden. The learning curve in small space homesteading is steep and rewarding. Because you're working with limited resources, every decision matters. You quickly learn what works and what doesn't. You develop skills rapidly because you can't afford to waste time or space on ineffective methods. This accelerated learning creates competence and confidence that extends far beyond gardening. Perhaps most importantly, small space homesteading teaches you that self-sufficiency isn't about having everything you need, it's about maximizing what you have. True resilience comes not from accumulating more stuff, but from developing the skills and mindset to work creatively within whatever constraints you face. This lesson is incredibly valuable in our current world. Economic uncertainty, environmental challenges, and social disruption are all reasons to develop greater self-reliance. But small space homesteading shows you that you don't need to own a farm or have a lot of money to move toward greater independence. You can start exactly where you are, with what you have right now. The ripple effects of this mindset extend into every aspect of your life. You become more resourceful in your career, finding creative solutions to challenges that others might see as insurmountable. You become more resilient in your relationships, working with what you have rather than focusing on what's missing. You become more confident in your ability to adapt and thrive regardless of circumstances. This is why I'm so passionate about small space homesteading. It's not just about growing food, though that's certainly valuable. It's about developing a mindset and skill set that makes you more capable, more creative, and more resilient. It's about proving to yourself that limitations are often just invitations to think differently. When you embrace the principles of small space homesteading, you join a movement of people who are choosing to take more control over their lives, their food, and their future. You become part of a community that values creativity over consumption, resilience over dependence, and possibility over limitation. The transformation that happens when you fully embrace this approach is profound and lasting. You develop confidence in your ability to solve problems, create abundance, and adapt to changing circumstances. These are the skills and mindset that will serve you well regardless of what the future holds. Now, as we wrap up this journey through small space homesteading, I want to leave you with something that goes beyond the techniques, beyond the containers and vertical gardens, beyond all the practical systems we've explored together. Because here's what I've discovered after years of helping people transform their tiny spaces into productive homesteads. The real magic isn't in the methods themselves, it's in the mindset shift that happens when you realize just how much is possible in the space you already have. You see, small space homesteading isn't really about space at all. It's about abundance thinking in a scarcity minded world. It's about looking at limitations and seeing opportunities. It's about understanding that self sufficiency isn't measured in acres, but in creativity, resourcefulness, and the willingness to start exactly where you are with exactly what you have. And that's incredibly powerful because it means you don't need to wait. You don't need to wait for the perfect property, the perfect climate, the perfect budget, or the perfect timing. You can start today in whatever space you're in right now with whatever resources you currently possess. That windowsill herb garden, that's your beginning. That single tomato plant in a 5-gallon bucket, that's your foundation. Those sprouts growing on your kitchen counter, that's your proof of concept. But here's where it gets really interesting. The skills you develop in small spaces, the systems thinking you cultivate, the resource consciousness you build, these aren't just gardening skills. They're life skills. They're problem solving skills. They're resilience skills. When you learn to maximize productivity in a 4x4 raised bed, you're developing the same mindset that helps you maximize efficiency in your work, your relationships, your finances, your time. When you learn to see vertical space as growing opportunity, you're training your brain to see possibility where others see limitation. This is why small space homesteading creates such profound transformation in people's lives. It's not just about the food, though the food is wonderful. It's not just about the money saved, though that's certainly valuable. It's about the confidence that comes from knowing you can create abundance anywhere. It's about the peace of mind that comes from understanding natural systems. It's about the joy that comes from eating something you grew with your own hands in your own space. And let's talk about that joy for a moment because it's something our modern world has largely forgotten. There's something deeply satisfying about harvesting your own lettuce for dinner, about picking fresh herbs to season your meal, about watching a tiny seed transform into nourishment for your family. It connects you to something ancient and essential, something that supermarket produce, no matter how convenient, simply cannot provide. The community aspect is equally powerful. When you start growing your own food, you become part of a different conversation. You connect with neighbors who share seeds and stories. You join online communities of people solving similar challenges. You become someone who contributes to food security rather than just consuming it. You model possibility for others who think they can't because they don't have enough space. And the environmental impact, it's profound. Every tomato you grow in a container is a tomato that didn't need to be shipped across the country. Every herb you snip from your windowsill is packaging that didn't need to be manufactured. Every salad you harvest from your balcony is a small victory against industrial agriculture's environmental footprint. Small spaces, when multiplied across millions of homes, create massive positive change. But perhaps most importantly, small space homesteading teaches you that you're more capable than you think. It teaches you that solutions exist for every challenge, that creativity can overcome almost any limitation, that abundance is a mindset more than a circumstance. These lessons extend far beyond gardening into every area of your life. So as you begin or continue your small space homesteading journey, remember this. You're not just growing plants, you're growing confidence. You're growing skills, you're growing resilience, you're growing connections to your food, your community, and your own capabilities. You're growing abundance in every sense of the word. The space you have is enough. The knowledge you're gaining is enough. The small steps you're taking are enough. Because in the world of small space homesteading, enough is actually abundant, and abundant is exactly what you're creating. One plant, one harvest, one growing season at a time. Now let's dive into the specific resource management strategies that will transform your small space into a thriving homestead. Water management is absolutely crucial in small space gardening, and this is where you can really showcase your innovative thinking. Rain collection doesn't require a massive roof or complex plumbing systems. A simple rain chain leading to a decorative barrel can collect surprising amounts of water from even a small overhang or patio cover. I've seen apartment dwellers collect water from their balcony railings using nothing more than a tarp and a few containers. The key is thinking creatively about every surface that touches water during rainfall. Gray water systems offer another incredible opportunity for resource optimization. The water from washing vegetables, the leftover water from steaming, even the water you use to rinse dishes before they go in the dishwasher, can all be repurposed for irrigation. Set up a simple collection system in your kitchen, and you'll be amazed at how much water you can redirect from the drain to your plants. Just remember to use biodegradable soaps and avoid water that's touched meat or dairy products. Soil creation and management in small spaces requires a completely different approach than traditional gardening. You're not just maintaining existing soil, you're actively creating a living ecosystem in containers and raised beds. Composting becomes essential, but it doesn't have to take up precious growing space. Bokashi composting uses beneficial microorganisms to ferment kitchen scraps in sealed containers, creating nutrient-rich compost without odors or pest issues. You can literally do this under your kitchen sink. Worm composting is another game changer for small spaces. A properly managed worm bin produces both compost and liquid fertilizer while taking up no more space than a storage container. The beauty of small space composting is that you can control every input. You know exactly what goes into your soil, which means you know exactly what goes into your food. This level of control is actually harder to achieve in large-scale operations, where you might be dealing with unknown soil conditions or contamination issues. Seed starting and plant propagation become critical skills when space is limited. Every square inch counts, so you can't afford to waste space on plants that don't thrive. Learning to start your own seeds gives you control over timing, variety selection, and plant health from day one. A simple seed starting setup on a windowsill or under a small grow light can produce dozens of plants for the cost of a few seed packets. Compare that to buying established plants from a nursery, and you'll quickly see the economic advantage. Propagation takes this concept even further. Many herbs and vegetables can be propagated from cuttings, meaning one plant can become many plants over time. Basil, mint, tomatoes, and many other common edibles root easily in water or soil. This multiplication effect means your initial investment in plants continues to pay dividends throughout the growing season and beyond. Preservation and storage strategies are where small space homesteading really shines. When you're growing intensively in a small area, you often get concentrated harvests that need to be preserved efficiently. Dehydrating, fermenting, and freezing all allow you to extend the harvest season and reduce food waste. A small dehydrator can preserve herbs, vegetables, and even fruits in a fraction of the space they would take fresh. Fermentation not only preserves food, but actually increases its nutritional value while adding beneficial probiotics to your diet. The key to successful small space preservation is planning your growing schedule around your preservation capacity. If you can only process a certain amount of tomatoes at once, stagger your planting so you're not overwhelmed with a massive harvest all at once. This is where succession planting becomes invaluable, giving you a steady stream of harvestable produce rather than overwhelming gluts. Energy efficiency in small spaces means making every input count. LED grow lights, if you choose to use them, should be selected for their efficiency and heat output. In a small space, excess heat can quickly become a problem, so choosing lights that provide maximum growing power with minimal heat generation is crucial. Similarly, any tools or equipment you use should be multifunctional. A tool that only serves one purpose is a luxury you can't afford when storage space is limited. Water-efficient irrigation systems become even more important in container gardening, where plants can dry out quickly. Drip irrigation systems, even simple ones made from recycled plastic bottles, can deliver water directly to plant roots while minimizing waste. Self-watering containers use capillary action to maintain consistent moisture levels, reducing the daily maintenance burden while ensuring plants never experience water stress. The integration of these resource management strategies creates a synergistic effect where each element supports the others. Your compost system feeds your soil, your water collection system supports your irrigation, your seed starting operation ensures continuous production, and your preservation methods extend the benefits of your harvest throughout the year. This integration is what transforms a small space from a hobby garden into a legitimate homesteading operation. One of the most powerful aspects of small space homesteading is how it changes your relationship with consumption and waste. When you're managing resources intensively, you become acutely aware of every input and output. Food scraps become compost ingredients, water becomes a precious resource to be captured and reused, and space becomes a canvas for creative problem solving. This heightened awareness often extends beyond your homesteading activities into other areas of life, creating a more mindful and sustainable lifestyle overall. The scalability of these systems means you can start small and expand gradually. Begin with a few containers and basic composting, then add water collection, then seed starting, then preservation techniques. Each addition builds on the previous systems, creating increasing levels of self-sufficiency and resilience. This gradual approach also spreads out the learning curve, allowing you to master each technique before adding complexity. Community building often emerges naturally from small space homesteading. When you're growing intensively in a small area, you often produce surpluses of certain items while lacking others. This creates natural opportunities for sharing and trading with neighbors and friends. A surplus of herbs might be traded for someone else's excess tomatoes. Seeds can be shared, techniques can be exchanged, and before you know it, you're part of a network of small space growers supporting each other's efforts. The educational value of small space homesteading extends far beyond the immediate participants. Children who grow up around these systems learn valuable lessons about where food comes from, how natural systems work, and how creativity and resourcefulness can overcome limitations. These lessons serve them well throughout life, regardless of whether they continue homesteading as adults. As we wrap up this exploration of small space homesteading, it's important to recognize that what we've discussed represents far more than just a gardening technique or a hobby. Small space homesteading is a comprehensive approach to living that emphasizes resourcefulness, creativity, and resilience in the face of constraints. It's about recognizing that abundance isn't about having unlimited resources, but about maximizing the potential of whatever resources you do have. The techniques and strategies we've covered, from vertical gardening to water collection to preservation methods, are all tools in service of a larger goal, creating a more sustainable, self-reliant, and fulfilling way of life. These methods prove that the barriers to self-sufficiency are often more mental than physical. The belief that you need acres of land or perfect conditions to grow your own food is simply not true. What you need is creativity, persistence, and a willingness to see problems as opportunities for innovation. The benefits we've discussed, from reduced grocery bills to improved health to enhanced food security, are real and measurable. But perhaps even more valuable are the intangible benefits: the confidence that comes from developing practical skills, the satisfaction of eating food you've grown yourself, the peace of mind that comes from knowing you can provide for yourself and your family regardless of external circumstances. Small space homesteading also represents a form of quiet activism. In a world increasingly dominated by industrial agriculture and processed foods, choosing to grow your own food in whatever space you have available is a powerful statement about your values and priorities. It's a declaration that you value health over convenience, sustainability over consumption, and self-reliance over dependence. The ripple effects of small space homesteading extend far beyond the individual practitioner. Every person who chooses to grow their own food, even in a small way, reduces demand on industrial food systems, decreases transportation related emissions, and contributes to local food security. When multiplied across thousands or millions of small space homesteaders, these individual actions create significant collective impact. As you begin or continue your small space homesteading journey, remember that perfection is not the goal. Every tomato grown in a container, every herb preserved for winter use, every gallon of rainwater collected is a victory. The goal is progress, not perfection, and every step toward greater self-sufficiency is valuable regardless of how small it might seem. The future of food security and sustainability may well depend on millions of people doing exactly what we've discussed today, maximizing the productive potential of small spaces, managing resources efficiently, and creating resilient local food systems. You're not just growing food in containers or collecting rainwater in barrels. You're participating in a movement toward a more sustainable and resilient way of life. The beauty of backyard homesteading in small spaces is that it meets you exactly where you are. Whether you have a tiny balcony, a modest patio, or a small yard, you possess everything needed to begin this incredible journey toward greater self-sufficiency and abundance. Remember, this isn't about perfection or comparison. It's about progress, experimentation, and discovering what works in your unique situation. Every seed you plant, every system you implement, and every harvest you enjoy builds momentum toward a more resilient and fulfilling lifestyle. Start small and think big. Choose one or two techniques that resonate with you, perhaps container gardening or setting up a simple rainwater collection system. As you gain confidence and experience, you'll naturally expand your efforts and refine your approach. The ripple effects of your small space homesteading journey extend far beyond fresh vegetables on your table. You're developing valuable skills, reducing your environmental footprint, strengthening your connection to natural cycles, and inspiring others in your community to explore their own possibilities. Your space limitations are not obstacles, they're opportunities for creativity and innovation. Every square foot has potential. Every vertical surface can contribute. Every challenge you overcome makes you more resourceful and self-reliant. The time to start is now. Your future self will thank you for taking that first step today. Your backyard homestead, no matter how small, is waiting to transform not just your space, but your entire perspective on what's possible.